Chapter 9. Christmas week came. Cities by thousands made preparation. Great shops took on vast cargoes of silk and precious things and seemed ready to sail about, distributing gifts to the town, and thought better of it, and let folk come in numbers to them to pay toll for what they took. Banks opened their doors and poured out, now a little trickling stream of pay envelopes, now a torrent of green and gold. Flower stalls drew tribute from 1,000,000 pots of earth where miracles had been done. Pastry counters, those mock commissariats, delicately masking as servants to necessity, made ready their pretty pretences to nutrition. The woods came moving in, acres of living green, taken in their sleep, their roots left faithful to a tryst with the sap, their tops summoned to bear an hybrid fruitage. From cathedrals rose the voices of children, now singing little carols and hymns in praise of the Christ child, now speaking little verses in praise of the saint, Nicholas, now clamoring for little new possessions. And afar from the fields that lay empty about the clustered roofs of towns came a chorus of voices of the live things, beast and fowl, being offered up in the gorgeous pagan rites of the day. Hither and yonder in every city the grown townsfolk ran. The most had lists of names: Grace, Margaret, Laura, Alice, Miriam, John, Philip, father, mother, beautiful names, and of rich portent, so that, remembering the time, one would have said that these were entered there with some import of special comradeship, of being face to face, of having realized in little what will some day be true in large. But on looking closer, the lists were found to have quite other connotations, as Grace, bracelet, Margaret, spangled scarf, Laura, chafing dish, Philip, smoking set, father, memo, ask mother what she thinks he'd like. And every name, it seemed, stood for some bestowal of new property, mostly of luxuries, and chiefly of luxuries of decoration. And the minds of the buying adults were like lakes played upon by clouds and storm birds and lightning, and, to be sure, many stars, but all in unutterable confusion. Also from the cargo-laden shops there came other voices in thousands, but these were mostly answers. And when one, understanding Christmas, listened to hear what part in it these behind the counter played, he heard from them no voice of sharing in the theory of peace, or even of truce, but instead, 2 a yard and double width. Jewelry is in the annex. Did you want 3 pairs of each? Veils and neckwear 3 aisles over. Leather, glassware, baskets, ribbons, down the store beyond the notions. Toys and dolls are in the basement, toys and dolls are in the basement. Jewelry is in the annex. So that a great part of the town seemed some strong chorus of invocation to new possessions. But there were other voices. Whole areas of every town lay, perforce, within the days of Christmas week. It must have been so, for there is only one calendar to embrace humanity, as there is only one way of birth and breath and death, one source of tears, one functioning for laughter. But to these reaches of the town the calendar was like another thing, for though it was upon them in name, its very presence was withdrawn. In those ill-smelling stairways and lofts there was little to divulge the imminence of anything other than themselves. And wherever some echo of Christmas week had crept, the wistfulness or the lust was for possession also, but here one could understand its insistence. So here the voices said only, I wish, and I choose this, and this, at windows, or, if I had back my nickel. Don't you go expecting nothing." And over these went the whir of machinery, beat of treadles, throb of engines, or the silence of forced idleness, or of the disease of dereliction. It was a time of many pagan observances, as when some were decked in precious stuffs and some were thrown to lions. To all these in the towns Christmas week came. And of them all not many stood silent and looked Christmas week in the face. Yet it is a human experience that none is meant to die without sharing. For the season is the symbol of what happens to folk if they claim it. Christmas is the time of withdrawal of most material life. It is the time when nature subtracts the externals, hides from man the phenomena of even her evident processes. Left alone, his thought turns inward and outward, which is to say, it lays hold upon the flowing force so slightly externalized in himself. If he finds in his own being 1,000 obstructions, 1,000 persons, dogs, sorcerers, whoremongers, he will try to escape from them all, back to the externals. But if he finds there a channel which the substance of being is using, he will be no stranger, but a familiar, with himself. Only when the channel has been long cleared, when there has left it all consciousness of striving, of self in any form, only when he finds himself empty, ready, immaculate, will he have the divine adventure. For it is then that in him the Spirit of God will have its birth, then that he will first understand his own nature, the nature of being. Then the turn of the year comes in, the year begins to mount. Birth is in it, growth is in it, spring is in it. Sometime, away back in beginnings, they knew this. They knew that the time of the winter solstice is in some strange fashion the high moment of the year, as the beginning of new activity in nature and in the gods. They solemnized the return of the fiery sun wheel, they traced in those solstice days the operations on earth of Odin and Birchta. They knew in themselves a thing they could not name. And when the supreme experience took place in Christ, they made the one experience typify the other, and became conscious of the divine nature of this nativity. So, by the Illuminati, the prophets, the adepts, the time that followed was yearly set aside, 40 days of dwelling within the temple of self, 40 days of reverence for being, of consciousness of new birth. Then the emergence, then the apotheosis of expression typifying and typified by spring, the time when bursting, pressing life almost breaks bounds, when birth and the impulse to birth are in every form of life, without and within. These festivals are not arbitrary in date. They grow out of the universal experience. Is it not then cause for stupefaction that this time of divine bestowal should have become so physical a thing? From the ancient perception, to have slipped into a sense of annual social comradeship and goodwill and peace was natural and fine, to live in the little what will some day be true in the large. But from this to have plunged down into a time of frantic physical bestowals, of present trading, of lists of Grace and Margaret and Philip, of teeming shops with hunting and hunted creatures within, of sacrificial trees and beasts, of a sovereign sense of good for me and mine, and a shameless show of Lord and Lady Bountiful, how can that have come about? How can the great festival have been so dishonored? Not all dishonored, for within it is its own vitality, which nothing can dishonor. Through all the curious variations which it receives at our hands, something shines and sings, self-giving, joy-giving, a vast, dim-up flickering on humanity of what this thing really is that it seeks to observe, this thing that grips men so that no matter what they are about, they will drop it at the touch of the gong and turn to some expression, however crooked and thwarted, of the real spirit of the time. If in war, then bayonets are stacked and holly-wreathed, and candles stuck on each point. If at sea, some sailor climbs out on the bowsprit with a wreath of green. If on the western plains, a turkey wishbone for target will make the sport, at 50 paces, if at home, some great extravagance or some humble gift or some poignant wish will point the day, if at church, then mass and carol, in certain hearts, reverence, everywhere the time takes hold of folk and receives whatever of greatness or grotesqueness they choose to give it. So, too, the actual and vital experience which it brings to humanity is universal, is offered with cosmic regularity, cannot be escaped. Through all the tumult of the time, Christmas week and the time that lies near to it is always waiting to claim its own, to take to itself those who will not be deceived, who see in the stupendous yearly pageant only the usual spectacle of humanity trying to say divine things in terms of things physical, because the time for the universal expression is not yet come. When that time comes, when the time of the worship of things shall be past, when the tribal sense of holiday shall have given place to the family sense, and that family shall be mankind, when shall never be seen the anomaly of celebrating in a glorification of little family tables, whose crumbs fall to those without, the birth of him who preached brotherhood, and the mockery of observing with wanton spending the birth of him who had not where to lay his head, when the rudiments of divine perception, of self-perception, of social perception, shall have grown to their next estate, when the area of consciousness shall be extended yet farther toward the outermost, when that new knowledge with which the air is charged shall let man begin to know what he is, when that time comes, they will look back with utmost wonder at our uncouth gropings to note and honor something whose import we so obscurely discern, but perhaps, too, with wonder that so much of human love and divining should shine for us through the mists we make. Chapter 10. 2 days before Christmas, Ellen Bourne went through the new-fallen snow of their wood lot. Her feet left scuffled tracks clouded about by the brushing of her gown's wet hem and by a dragging corner of shawl. She came to a little evergreen tree, not 4 feet tall, with low-growing boughs, and she stood looking at it until her husband, who was also following the snow-filled path, overtook her. "Matthew," she said then, "will you cut me that?" Matthew Bourne stood with his axe on his shoulder, and looked a question in slow preparation to ask one. "I just want it," she said. "I've took a notion." He said that she had a good many notions, it seemed to him. But he cut the little tree, with casual ease and no compunctions, and they dragged it to their home, the soft branches patterning the snow and obscuring their footprints. "It's like real Christmas weather," Ellen said. "They can't stop that coming, anyhow." In the kitchen, Ellen's father sat before the open oven door of the cooking stove, letting the snow melt from his heavy boots. "Hey," he said, "I was beginning to think you'd forgot about supper. What was in the trap?" At once Ellen began talking rapidly. "Oh," she said, "we'll have some muffins tonight, Father. The kind you like, with—" "Well, what was in the trap?" the old man demanded peevishly. "Why don't you answer back? What was, Matt?" Matthew, drying his axe blade, looked at it with one eye closed. "Rabbit," he said. "Where is it?" her father demanded. "It was a young one, not as big as your fist," Ellen said. "I let it out before he got there." Where's mother? Just because a thing's young, it ain't holy water, the old man complained. Last time it was a squirrel you let go because it was young, it's like being spendthrift with manna. He went on. Ellen's mother appeared, gave over to Ellen the supper preparations, contented herself with auxiliary offices of china and butter getting, and talked the while, pleased that she had something to disclose. Ben Helders stopped in, she told. He's going to the city tomorrow. What do you suppose after? A boy. He's going to take him to bring up and work on the farm. Where's he going to get the boy? Ellen asked. Her mother did not know, but Mrs. Helders was going to have a new diagonal and she wanted the number of Ellen's pattern. Ben would stop for it that night. Evenings their kitchen was a sitting room, and when the supper had been cleared away and the red cotton spread covered the table, Ellen asked her husband to bring in the little tree. She found a cracker box, handily cut a hole with a cooking knife, and set up the little tree by the kitchen window. What under the canopy? Said her mother, her voice cracking. Oh, something to do in the evening, Ellen answered. Father's going to pop me some corn to trim it with, aren't you, Father? Mother, why don't you get you a good big darning needle and string what he pops? It'll make a lot of litter, said her mother, but she brought the needle, for something to do. Hey, king and country, said her father, I'd ought to have somebody here to shell it for me. Who you trimming up a tree for? Her mother demanded. I thought they wasn't to be any in town this year. It ain't Christmas yet, Ellen said only. I guess it won't do any hurt 2 days before. While the two worked, Ellen went to the cupboard drawer, and from behind her pile of kitchen towels she drew out certain things, walnuts, wrapped in shining yeast tinsel and dangling from red yarn, wishbones tied with strips of bright cloth, a tiny box, made like a 155 house, with rudely cut doors and windows, eggshells penciled as faces, a handful of peanut owls, a glass-stoppered bottle, a long necklace of buttonhole twist spools. A certain blue paper soldier doll that she had made was upstairs, but the other things she brought and fastened to the tree. Her husband smoked and uneasily watched her. He saw somewhat within her plan, but he was not at home there. If the boy had lived and had been up chamber asleep now, he thought once, it'd be something like to go trimming up a tree. But this way. What you leaving the whole front of the tree bare for? Her mother asked. The blue paper soldier goes there. I want it should see the blue paper soldier first thing. Ellen said, and stopped abruptly. You talk like you was trimming the tree for somebody, her mother observed, aggrieved. Maybe something might look in the window, going by, Ellen said. Get in there. Get your heads in there, ye beggars, said the old man to the popcorn. I'd ought to have somebody here to pick up them shooting kernels, he complained. In a little while, with flat-footed stamping, Ben Helders came in. When he had the pattern number, by laborious copying against the wall under the bracket lamp, Matthew said to him, Going to get a boy to work out, are you? Helders laughed and shifted. He's going to work by and by, he said. We allow to have him to ourselves a spell first. Keep him around the house till spring? More, said Helders. You see, he added, it's like this with us, family all gone, all married, and got their own. We figured to get hold of a little shaver and have some comfort with him before he goes to work for life. Adopt him, said Matthew, curiously. That's pretty near it, Helders admitted. We've got one spoke for at the City Orphan Asylum. Ellen Bourne turned. How old? She asked. Around 5, 6, we figure. Helders said it almost sheepishly. Ellen stood facing the men, with the white festoons of popcorn in her hands. Matthew, she said, let him bring us one. Matthew stared. You mean bring us a boy? He asked. I don't care which, girl or boy. Anything young, Ellen said. Good Lord, Ellen, Matthew said, with high eyebrows, ain't you got your hands full enough now? Ellen Bourne lifted her hands slightly and let them fall. No, she answered. The older woman looked at her daughter, and now first she was solicitous, as a mother. Ellen, she said, you have, too, got your hands full. You're wore out all the time. That's it, Ellen said, and I'm not wore out with the things I want to do. Hey, king and country, the old man cried, upsetting the popper. Don't get a child around here underfoot. I'm too old. I deserve grown folks. My head hurts me. Matthew, said Ellen to her husband, let Helders bring us one. Tomorrow, for Christmas, Matt. Matthew looked slowly from side to side. It seemed incredible that so large a decision should lie with a man so ineffectual. Seems like we'd ought to think about it a while first, he said weakly. Think about it, said Ellen. When haven't I thought about it? When have I thought about anything else but him? We haven't got any more? Ellen, the mother mourned, you don't know what you're taking on yourself. Hush, mother, Ellen said gently, you don't know what it is. You had me. She faced Helders. Will you bring 2 when you come back tomorrow night, she said, and one of them for us? Helders looked sidewise at Matthew, who was fumbling at his pipe. Wouldn't you want to see it first, now? Helders temporized. And a girl or a boy, now? No, I wouldn't want to see it first, I couldn't bear to choose. One healthy, from healthy parents, and either girl or boy, Ellen said, and stopped. The nicest tree thing I've made is for a boy, she owned. It's a paper soldier. I made these things for fun, she added to Helders. For the first time Helders observed the tree. Then he looked in the woman's face. I'll fetch out a boy for you if you say so, he said. Then do, she bade. When the 4 were alone again, Matt sat looking at the floor. Every headlong thing I've ever done I've gone headlong over, he said gloomily. Ellen took a coin from the clock shelf. When Ben goes past tomorrow, she merely said, you'll likely see him. Have him get some little candles for the tree. My head hurts me, the old man gave out, this ain't the place for a great noisy boy. Ellen put her hand on his shoulder almost maternally. See, dear, she said, then you'd be grandfather. Hey, he said, not if it was adopted, I wouldn't. Why, of course. That would make it ours, and yours. See, she cried, you've been stringing popcorn for it already, and you didn't know. Be grandfather, would I? Said the old man. Would I? Hey, king and country. Grandfather again. Ellen was moving about the kitchen lightly, with that manner which eager interest brings, of leaving only half footprints. "Come on, Mother," she said, "we must get the popcorn strung for sure, now." The mother looked up at the tree. "Seems as if," she said, wrinkling her forehead, "I used to make pink Tolton stockings for your trees and fill them with the corn. I don't know, but I've got a little piece of pink Tolton somewheres in my bottom drawer." Next night they had the bracket lamp and the lamp on the shelf and the table hand lamp all burning. The little tree was gay with the white corn and the colored trifles. The kitchen seemed to be centering in the tree, as if the room had been concerned long enough with the doings of these grown folk and now were looking ahead to see who should come next. It was the high moment of immemorial expectancy, when those who are alive turn the head to see who shall come after. "What you been making all day, Daddy?" Ellen asked, tense at every sound from without. Her father, neat in his best clothes, blew away a last plume of shaved wood and held out something. "I just whittled out a kind of a clothespin, man," he explained. "I made one for you, once, and you liked it like everything. Mebbe a boy won't," he added doubtfully. "Oh, but a boy will." Ellen cried, and tied the doll above the blue paper soldier. "Hadn't they ought to be here pretty soon?" Matthew asked nervously. "Where's Mother?" "She's watching from the front room window," Ellen answered. Once more Helders came stamping on the kitchen porch, but this time there was a patter of other steps, and Ellen caught open the door before he summoned. Helders stepped into the room, and with him was a little boy. "This one?" Ellen asked, her eyes alive with her eagerness. But Helders shook his head. "Miss Bourne," he said, "I'm real dead sorry. They want but the one. Just the one we'd spoke for." "One?" Ellen said, "You said orphan asylum." "There's only the one," Helders repeated. "The others is little bits of babies, or else spoke for like ours, long ago. It seems they do that way. But I want you should do something. I want you and Matthew should take this one. Mother and I are older, we ain't set store so much." Ellen shook her head, and made him know, with what words she could find, that it could not be so. Then she knelt and touched at the coat of the child, a small frightened thing, with cap too large for him and one mitten lost. But he looked up brightly, and his eyes stayed on the Christmas tree. Ellen said little things to him, and went to take down for him some trifle from the tree. "I'm just as much obliged," she said quietly to Helders. "I never thought of there not being enough. We'll wait." Helders was fumbling for something. "Here's your candles, I thought you might want them for something else," he said, and turned to Matthew, "and here's your quarter. I didn't get the toy you mentioned. I thought you wouldn't want it, without the little kid." Matthew looked swiftly at Ellen. He had not told her that he had sent by Helders for a toy. And at that Ellen crossed abruptly to her husband, and she was standing there as they let Helders out, with the little boy. Ellen's father pounded his knee. "But how long we have to wait? How long we have to wait?" he demanded shrilly. "King and country, why didn't somebody ask him that?" Matthew tore open the door. "Helders," he shouted, "how long did they say we'd have to wait?" "Meb only a week or two, meb longer." Helders' voice came out of the dark. "They couldn't tell me." Ellen's mother stood fastening up a fallen tinsel walnut. "Let us leave the tree right where it is," she said. "Even with it here, we won't have enough Christmas to hurt anything."